It was supposed to be just another office party. Nothing more than a light-hearted evening to celebrate the success of my wife's latest project. She had poured herself into that campaign for months, and I was proud of her. I wanted to be there, not just as her husband, but as her biggest supporter. From the moment we stepped into the room, the air buzzed with celebration. Music pulsed gently in the background. Glasses clinked, and laughter wove its way through every corner. She was radiant, completely in her element, floating from one conversation to the next, exchanging hugs, handshakes, and smiles like a queen among her court. But then I saw him, Jordan, tall, stylish, and oozing that effortless kind of charm that always feels a little too calculated. The way he hugged her was just a little too tight, too familiar. The kind of hug that lingers a second longer than it should. When she turned to introduce me, he barely nodded, just a casual flick of his chin, before refocusing all his attention back on her, like I wasn't even standing there. I brushed it off at first, told myself I was overthinking. Maybe he was just friendly. But then came the shoulder touches, the whispered jokes near her ear, the shared laughter with side glances in my direction. It wasn't subtle. It was a performance, and I was the intended audience. As we made our way through the crowd, Jordan kept weaving himself back into our conversations, always with some clever line or mocking little jab. "I don't know how you keep up with her, man," he said once, smirking like a kid with a slingshot behind his back. Another time, "Honestly, I think we spend more time together than you two do." Laughter rippled through the group, awkward and shallow, but I didn't laugh. I didn't react. I just watched, quietly. Then came the game. Someone, probably already too deep into their third drink, suggested truth or dare. I was in the mood, but my wife nudged me, her eyes lit with excitement, and whispered, "Come on, just for fun." So I agreed. Jordan was the first to jump in, taking a seat directly across from me, like a kid itching for a fight. He grinned, eyes locked on mine. "I'll take a dare," he announced, then leaned forward. "And I dare you to show us how tough you really are. You and me, arm wrestle, right here, right now." The room quieted. Every side conversation faded out, replaced by an electric tension. It wasn't about strength. It was a challenge dressed up as a party game. But everyone knew what was really on the line. My wife glanced at me, uncertain. I could see the discomfort in her face, but she didn't speak. I looked at Jordan, then at her, then back at him. I nodded. "Sure," I said, calm and steady. "Let's do it." We cleared space on the nearest table, and people gathered around. The light above us seemed sharper now, more focused. This wasn't just a game, it was a statement. We locked hands. His grip was strong, his smirk confident. He looked at me like he'd already won. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been lifting for years. Not for vanity, not for show, for discipline, for myself. He went in fast, aggressive, trying to end it before it even began. But I didn't move. I held him there, steady and unmoved, like steel under pressure. Then, inch by inch, I pushed back. I watched the smirk die in his eyes as his wrist bent backward, his face tightening with effort. In one smooth, controlled motion, I slammed his hand down on the table. Gasps echoed. A few scattered cheers. Laughter from the corners. Jordan pulled his hand back, rubbing his wrist with a forced grin. "Guess I wasn't ready for that," he muttered, eyes avoiding mine now. I just sat back and exhaled. I wasn't proud in the boastful sense, but I was satisfied because I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't played his game. I just answered his challenge, silently and directly. My wife looked at me with something different in her eyes. Not just surprise, but a kind of reverence, like she remembered something about me she'd somehow forgotten. She slid closer to me after that, her hand finding mine more often, her laughter sounding less distracted and more connected. Jordan kept his distance for the rest of the night. He didn't look at me again. He didn't need to. He understood. As we left the party, the air cool and quiet now, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "You didn't have to do that, but I'm glad you did." I smiled and kissed her forehead. Some things don't need to be explained. Some moments don't require words. That night taught me something that no amount of silence ever could. Respect isn't always preserved through patience. Sometimes it has to be reclaimed with action, with calm force, with quiet strength. Jordan learned his place, and my wife remembered mine.